ChatGPT said. The man's arm made a noise like wet branches snapping underfoot, and by the time his scream reached the sky, Jack was already stepping past him. The second enforcer was reaching for something, pepper spray maybe, or a badge, but Jack drove him back into the fence with a single open palm. Ethan, barefoot and clutching a popsicle, stood frozen near the swing set. Jack's voice cut through the chaos, calm and firm. Inside, buddy. Now. The boy ran. The two men hadn't come to talk. They'd come to take his kid. And Jack Reynolds, retired Navy SEAL and full-time father, didn't negotiate with trespassers. 3 hours earlier, it had been a perfectly normal morning. The sun had just climbed above the treeline, casting golden rays across the suburban cul-de-sac. Jack had made pancakes the way Ethan liked, burned on the edges, with chocolate chips shaped like a smiley face. Their golden retriever, Daisy, lay sprawled in the doorway, half watching squirrels that dared to dance across the lawn. Jack wasn't thinking about war zones or operational tactics. He was thinking about whether the school fundraiser needed one more pie donation. Then the black SUV rolled in. It wasn't unusual to see new vehicles in the neighborhood. It wasn't even strange for people to park near Jack's house. But this SUV lingered. The two men who got out were tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in matching windbreakers with HOA enforcement stenciled across the back in bold white letters. One of them carried a clipboard, the other had a holster of some kind on his belt, unusual for an HOA rep. They didn't look like neighborhood volunteers. They looked like men who liked taking things that didn't belong to them. They didn't knock. They scanned Jack's yard like it was a crime scene. One of them took photos of the flagpole Jack had set up beside the porch. The other scribbled on the clipboard and pointed toward Ethan's swing set. Jack watched through the front window. His instincts didn't like it. He knew the look of recon when he saw it, and these two were casing his property like a breach target. He stepped outside, mug of black coffee in one hand, no shoes on, just a quiet calm in his eyes. Can I help you boys with something? The man with the clipboard stepped forward, acting like he owned the sidewalk. You Jack Reynolds? Jack gave a slow nod. We've had some concerns raised by the Homeowners Association. Child occupancy violations. Vehicle misregistration. Unauthorized equipment on a residential lot. Jack blinked once. Equipment? The man pointed toward the swing set. That structure isn't approved in the community handbook. And more importantly, the minor on premises, he doesn't appear in any of the household records. Is he your biological child? The calm drained from Jack's face. Not quickly. Not violently. Just enough to let the silence stretch thin and dangerous. He took another sip of his coffee, his eyes hardening just slightly. You want to repeat that last question? The man didn't. But the other one, clearly thinking he needed to assert some dominance, stepped toward the gate and reached for the latch. We'll just have a quick look around, sir. Jack's mug hit the porch railing as he moved. The gate flung open just as the man's hand reached for the latch, and Jack grabbed his wrist midair. One twist, one pivot, and a lifetime of joint manipulation training unfolded in a single motion. The man crumpled with a howl, clutching an arm bent the wrong way. The other reached for his belt, but Jack was already on him. A shove, a sharp step forward, and the second man stumbled back, hitting the fence hard enough to knock a loose board free. Ethan stared wide-eyed from behind the swing. Inside, buddy, Jack said again. The boy didn't hesitate. Inside, Daisy barked twice, low and alert. Jack stood between the two groaning men and his front door. The clipboard guy wheezed. We're just trying to enforce community rules. Jack tilted his head. Show me your credentials. Real ones. They didn't. Instead, one of them muttered into a radio clipped beneath his jacket. Jack caught the word. Non-compliant. That's when he knew they weren't real HOA. They weren't even close. Neighbors were starting to notice. A woman across the street peered out from behind her blinds. Someone 2 houses down stepped onto their porch, phone in hand. Jack let them watch. Let them see what happened when you brought war to a man who'd already survived it. The sound of a siren approached from the end of the street, and a county sheriff cruiser rolled up moments later. A deputy stepped out, one hand hovering near his sidearm. "Sir, what's going on here?" the deputy asked, eyes flicking between Jack and the two battered men on the lawn. Jack nodded toward the enforcers. "Ask them who they are. And ask them why they tried to take my kid." The deputy raised a brow but followed protocol. He demanded IDs, then radioed them in. Jack stood still, arms crossed, not saying another word. He didn't need to. His job was done. When the call came back, the deputy's entire posture changed. "These guys are wanted," he muttered. "One has priors for impersonating an officer. The other's license is fake. They don't work for any recognized HOA in this county." Jack exhaled, slowly. One of the fake enforcers, still on the ground, looked up and sneered. "You think this ends with us? You have no idea who we work for." Jack leaned in slightly, just enough so the man could hear his next words clearly. "Neither do you," he said. The cuffs went on. Backup arrived. Jack filed the report. Ethan stayed inside, calm but quiet, holding Daisy's ears while the noise outside faded. Jack made sure his boy saw none of the ugliness, but he knew this wasn't over. These men hadn't been robbers. They hadn't been pranksters. They were part of something bigger. Jack could smell it, the way wolves smell fire long before it sparks. And this time, they had made a mistake bigger than fake badges or legal threats. They came for his son. Next time, he wouldn't just break arms. He'd break the system. The knock on the door didn't come until well after sunset, when the sky had turned the color of burned coals and most of the neighborhood had gone quiet. Jack had just tucked Ethan into bed and was halfway through clearing the dinner plates when Daisy let out a single, low bark. Not frantic. Just alert. Jack knew that bark. Someone was too close to the house. He moved without hesitation, lights off, body low, sweeping to the side of the front window. A black car idled out front, engine running. Its headlights were off, but he could see the outline of the driver leaning just slightly toward the passenger side, like they were watching the house. Then came the knock. Not a knock, really. A tap. Fingertips rapping twice against the screen door, polite but insistent. He opened the door slowly, letting only the porch light pour out. A woman in her 60s stood there, well-dressed, hair tied back in a tight bun, holding a manila folder. Her tone was sweet, but every inch of her body radiated condescension. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Linda Schroeder, acting president of the Ridgeview Homeowners Association. I understand there was some confusion earlier today." Jack stared at her, saying nothing. "Those men were temporary contractors. Enforcement volunteers, you might say. Overzealous, perhaps, but you know how people can be when children are involved." He didn't answer. Just waited. She smiled like a diplomat playing at peace. "There have been several reports regarding a child staying on the property without appropriate documentation. Our community guidelines clearly state that all occupants under 18 must be registered with the HOA. You'd be surprised how often we find squatters. It's our job to ensure the safety of—" Jack stepped forward, making her take a half step back. "You just called my son a squatter." Her smile faltered. She recovered with a practiced shrug. "Paperwork, Jack. It's nothing personal." She held out the manila folder. He took it, glanced at the top page. Legal language, paragraphs of policy violations, citations, and near the bottom, a notice of potential eviction pending a formal hearing. It was signed. By her. And by two other HOA board members he'd never heard of. Jack read the first paragraph, then handed the folder back without a word. Linda tilted her head. "That's all you have to say?" He smiled thinly. "I don't waste breath on lies." Then he shut the door and deadbolted it. She didn't leave right away. Jack stood at the side window and watched as she sat in her car, engine still running, lights still off, for nearly an hour. Just watching the house. Jack didn't sleep. He moved through the house quietly, checking locks, resetting the security system, and activating the perimeter cameras. He checked Ethan twice, once more just before midnight. The boy was asleep, clutching a stuffed bear with one arm and Daisy with the other. Jack returned to the living room, turned on his tablet, and started digging. At first, it was nothing unusual. A homeowners association registered through a basic state portal, with Linda listed as acting president. But then things got strange. The HOA's paperwork had been amended 6 times in 2 years. The names on the board changed constantly. Their listed address was a P.O. box. Their business number wasn't attached to any real legal authority. Jack called Reyes. Reyes picked up on the 3rd ring. "Jack! It's midnight. You calling to reminisce about Kandahar again?" Jack didn't laugh. "Need a favor. Digital dive. Got an HOA on my back that smells off. Need to know who funds them, who runs them, who's got their hands on their leash." Reyes's tone shifted instantly. "Copy. Give me the names." Jack gave him everything. 10 minutes later, Reyes was back. "Jack. You're right. This isn't a homeowners association. It's a shell. A corporate shell tied to a private security firm. You remember Crayfield Defense Group?" Jack remembered. He remembered the headlines, the scandals, the disbanded contracts overseas. "They went dark 3 years ago," Reyes continued. "Resurfaced as a dozen smaller companies. This HOA is one of them." Jack's jaw tightened. Why the hell would a ghost security firm run a fake HOA in a gated neighborhood? Reyes hesitated. "It's not just you. I ran the parcel records. 5 other families in your area got flagged last year. Military backgrounds, widowed, single parents. All with kids." Jack felt the pieces click together, each one colder than the last. Surveillance. Targeting. Extraction. "You think they're building a profile list?" he asked. "I think," Reyes said, "they're doing more than building it." The next day, Jack drove to the Ridgeview HOA office listed on the eviction notice. It wasn't an office. It was a back room in a half-empty strip mall sandwiched between a vape store and a pawn shop. The windows were blacked out. No signage. The door was locked. Jack looked around, stepped to the side, and used a credit card edge and a little pressure to pop the door open. Inside was a folding table, a single chair, and 3 steel file cabinets. No cameras. No receptionist. No office smell. Just the cold whiff of bureaucracy done in secret. He rifled through the cabinets. What he found made his blood turn to ice. Dossiers. Dozens of them. Each labeled by last name. Inside, photos of families. Property maps. Background checks. Medical records. Even psychological evaluations. Some pages were marked asset potential. Others were labeled test subject pending. Jack found his own file, thick, organized, detailed down to Ethan's school performance and his own military medals. There were notes in the margins. Child exhibits independence and physical aptitude. Subject father is high threat, monitor closely. Jack photographed everything. Every page. He didn't touch anything else. He left the office the way he found it, then drove straight to the county zoning office. The clerk there looked confused when he showed her the paperwork. "This isn't a registered HOA," she said, after scanning their records. "They don't even own the land under their listed office. This is state property." Jack stared at her. "Then who the hell gave them authority over families here?" The clerk shook her head. "Nobody. They're not even real." By nightfall, Jack had built a timeline. He had evidence. He had names. But most of all, he had a very clear picture. This wasn't about a fence line or a noise complaint. This was about control. Surveillance. Acquisition. Someone had decided his son wasn't just a kid playing in a backyard. He was a potential asset. And now Jack knew exactly what he was going to do about it. Because next time they showed up, he wasn't going to file a report. He wasn't going to call Reyes. And he sure as hell wasn't going to wait for help. Next time, they were going to learn what happened when you declared war on a Navy SEAL's home. You said? Third. ChatGPT said. The neighborhood barbecue was a lie. Jack knew it the moment the food trucks rolled in. It was a Thursday afternoon, too random for a block party, and nobody had mentioned it in the community forums. The same SUV from the first incident circled twice before parking near the trail path. 3 vans followed it, each identical, white, unmarked, tinted windows. Linda strolled around the cul-de-sac with a clipboard, handing out cheerful flyers, her voice pitched too sweet, too fake. She even waved at Jack. He didn't wave back. Ethan was in the backyard, tossing a tennis ball for Daisy while music started playing down the street. Jack stood near the fence, eyes never leaving the vans. 2 women emerged with baby strollers, no babies inside. One walked straight toward Jack's gate, pretending to admire the landscaping. Jack's hand instinctively moved to his back. He wasn't carrying a gun, but he didn't need one. His house was a trap, and he had designed it that way. He tapped his smartwatch. Inside, the system engaged, front lock sealed, panic room initiated, and Ethan's bedroom turned into a silent bunker. Daisy barked once, sharp, alert. Jack walked out to the driveway as the first van door opened. 4 men stepped out, dressed like casual movers but walking like trained muscle. They split instantly. 2 headed down the sidewalk, 2 circled behind the neighboring houses. The women smiled nervously and backed away. The man approaching Jack had one hand behind his back. Mr. Reynolds? He asked, voice calm and firm. We're here on behalf of the Ridgeview Enforcement Committee. Jack didn't answer. The man reached into his pocket. Jack closed the distance before the man could react. A lightning-fast strike to the wrist made the badge fall to the ground. Jack's knee came up hard into the man's gut, folding him in 2. As the man collapsed, Jack turned and sprinted toward the backyard. The back gate was already swinging open. 1 man stepped through with a net gun, aiming for the golden retriever. Jack hit him mid-step, breaking the weapon in half over the man's spine. The second intruder went for Ethan's room. Too late. The panic room door was sealed, the kid was locked inside, watching cartoons and eating fruit snacks like nothing had happened. Jack didn't stop moving. He ducked low, swept the man's legs, and drove him into the fence post hard enough to splinter the wood. From the corner of his eye, Jack saw another figure scaling the side wall. A grappling hook? These people were serious. Jack reached under a loose floorboard on the back patio and pulled out a collapsible baton. The climber dropped down, grinning with overconfidence, until Jack swung the baton across his jaw and dropped him like a tree limb. That left 1 more, unaccounted for. The front of the house. Jack ran full speed through the side yard, leaping the fence like it was a hurdle. He landed on the driveway just as Linda raised her arm and shouted, "He's resisting again!" A man with tactical gloves came from behind her and sprinted toward Jack. Jack didn't wait. He launched forward and tackled the man head-on. Fists flew. The man was strong, trained, but not trained like Jack. Within seconds, Jack had him pinned on the concrete, arm twisted back at a brutal angle. Linda stepped forward and raged. "You're insane! This is a legal inspection!" Jack turned his head slowly and said, "You sent armed men to take my son. That's not inspection. That's an abduction attempt." Then came the sirens. But they weren't coming for Jack. Sheriff Miller's cruiser peeled into the street, followed by 2 unmarked county vehicles. The HOA crowd tried to scatter, but it was too late. Officers swarmed the scene. Miller got out, notepad in hand, already knowing who to cuff first. "We've got reports of forced entry, impersonation, and possible kidnapping attempts," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Jack, you good?" Jack nodded. "Kid's safe. House is clear. 4 men down, 1 crying. That one may need shoulder surgery." Linda tried to protest. "I'm the president of the Ridgeview Homeowners Association. These were official HOA enforcers." Miller shook his head slowly. No, ma'am. You're not. The county zoning office says this HOA doesn't legally exist. In fact, you and your entire board have been operating without a charter, on land you don't own, under a name you forged. He motioned to one of his deputies. Cuff her. The moment the cuffs clicked, she exploded. You don't understand. We were doing this for control, for the good of the community. These families, these veterans, they're dangerous. Jack stepped forward, voice even. No, lady. You're the danger. That's when a black government SUV rolled up. A man in a suit stepped out, flashed a federal badge, and walked straight to Sheriff Miller. We've been tracking this group for months. Mr. Reynolds' report confirmed our intel. They're not just impersonating HOA officials. They've been targeting former military parents across multiple states. We believe they were attempting to recruit children for covert psychological programs. Jack's fists clenched. They tried to take my son. The agent looked him square in the eye. And thanks to you, they won't try it with anyone else again. 2 days later, the Ridgeview sign came down. The fake HOA office was gutted by federal order. Linda and her entire board faced charges of impersonation, fraud, trespassing, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping. Jack didn't speak to the press. He didn't give interviews. He just went back to coaching Ethan's Little League team and fixing the back fence where a man's head had left a dent. The neighborhood finally felt normal again. Ethan asked once, "Are the balloon people coming back?" Jack ruffled his son's hair and said, "Not unless they want to meet Daisy's teeth." The boy laughed and ran off into the yard, safe under the watch of the only man brave, or dangerous, enough to keep him there. Because this time, the Navy SEAL didn't just survive the mission. He buried it.